Yo, what's going on? It's me, Jay. We're out here doing the 2021 year in review show as promised on this channel. Let's get to it. It was a really eventful year um post 2020. As we all know and we all remember, 2020 was the craziest year in all of the history of humanity with COVID, with the election business, and all of that stuff. It started off crazy. Hey, Lisa, what's going on? Lisa's in the building. It started off crazy. When we left off last time in 2020, we didn't even know who the president even was. And so, in the political arena, that was what we had going on. We weren't even for sure if Biden was going to be the president or Trump was going to be the president. We didn't even know for 6 days until, and as we can see in the picture below, even when we knew, even when we found out, we still didn't know because Donald Trump and his campaign still continued to dispute it all the way up till January the 6th when his followers did something that was never done in the history of the United States. They actually stormed the Capitol and they actually tried to take over the United States government and actually succeeded. While Congress was in session counting up all the votes, these crazy individuals, these MAGA people, these terrorists, these domestic terrorists, actually got inside and actually defiled the sacred, hallowed ground of the United States. This was something that we had not ever seen before in history. There was no precedent for it. There was nothing we could ever compare it to. The only thing kind of comparable to it was when the British burned the White House down during the War of 1812. But even that was not comparable because they were a foreign government. This was a domestic dispute. Basically, what this was vanilla ISIS coming to bat. And what was so crazy about it and so funny about it was there was actually a guy dressed as a freaking QAnon shaman, dressed as a Viking with Viking helmets, Viking clothes, and everything on his body. This guy was some crazy, whacked out, I don't know, meth head addict or whatever. But this is what happened on January the 6th when they were counting the votes. All this whole time, President Trump was amping his followers up, telling them that we're going to dispute, we're going to stop the steal of the election by the Democrats. We're going to take back the country. So he was ramping them up in his mind, in their minds with his rhetoric. Still with the virus going on, still with the COVID vaccine, the COVID um, pandemic raging in the streets. These people didn't care. They were so ramped up with political rhetoric by Trump that they were going to do whatever it took. They even killed somebody. They beat somebody to death. One of the security guards, one of the cops. So this had no parallel in U.S. history, as I said before, and that's how we started off. That's how we started off on January the 6th. Add to that, they came out with the COVID vaccine. First, the Johnson and Johnson, which was proven to be a fraud, and then the Moderna and Pfizer. So what we've been dealing with over these past 12 months is people having a rebellious attitude, people having an attitude towards the COVID vaccine because President Biden came up with it, that I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to abide by these mandates. I'm not going to do what is told of of me. Lisa is saying the Johnson and Johnson vaccine was not proven a fraud. I initially thought it was, Lisa, that the Johnson and Johnson vaccine was proven a fraud. My mistakes, my mistake for coming uh, with that. Johnson and apparently I'm wrong. Johnson and Johnson was not proven to be a fraud, but they come out with the vaccine, both the Johnson and Johnson and the Moderna and the Pfizer, and still people still don't want to take the vaccine. They still are persistent. President Biden is gun ho that we get this vaccine, but again, they're politicizing the thing. They're not looking at it as a health concern. They're not looking at it as a health crisis. They're looking at it as of, oh, how am I going to prove my point that I want to go against the Democrats? How am I going to continue to rebel? How am I going to continue to cause mischief in the country by not taking this vaccine? So then what happens, because of their insolence and because of their refusal to get the vaccine, other variants, not necessarily because of it, but what ends up happening is other variants begin to spread, variants from other places like the Delta variant. And just as we assume we have a handle on this global pandemic that is unprecedented in the country, another variant pops up. First the Delta variant, and now the Omicron variant. And all while this is going on, again, people are challenging President Biden. People are actually out here saying that President Biden did not win the election, despite having more votes than any presidential candidate in history, even more so than previous presidents Barack Obama and Donald Trump. The country becomes more divided and more divided. And at a time then when we should stick together, we become even more divided. Everything that goes on is a political issue. The vaccine becomes an issue. The election becomes an issue in January. And it just seems like we're about to go to war with each other. Seems like there's nothing that we could ever agree on. We stop disagreeing with each other. Civility is out the window. And where we are now in 2021 as we come into 2022 is the variants seem worse than ever. And the people in our country seem to be politicizing this in ways that they shouldn't. As President Biden and Vice President Harris seem to be getting a hold on it, others in our country, other political parties and factions prove to be uncontrollable. Now, where we are at politically, who knows where we are at with this, but we cannot get a handle on the vaccine going into February and going into March, a year anniversary of dealing with this global pandemic, and there's no hope in sight. While this is going on in New York, the governor of New York is thrown out of office because he did some inappropriate acts. And not only did he do inappropriate acts, but he was discovered that during the height of the pandemic the year prior in 2020, he was throwing elderly people while they were sick into nursing homes. So he is publicly shamed. But in the shadow of that, we then get our first female governor in the history of the state of New York, Kathy Hochul. So we're looking at each other in the world now. We're at this stage in 2021 where we don't know who to trust. We don't know if we should trust our neighbor. We don't know who's our friend. We can't even trust our politicians to tell us the truth anymore or to do what is right. Governor Cuomo then goes on his rampage defending himself, saying that it's a witch hunt, saying that he is a victim of cancel culture. This thing that was a thing online that we all debated about and we all went back and forth about online has now reached the mainstream media. And you have politicians that are actually guilty, accusing other people in the media of being victims of cancel culture. And Governor Cuomo is one of them. But in the midst of this, Republicans, again, they attack Governor Cuomo, but they refuse to attack President Trump, who is their hero. President Trump, who they risk life and limb to defend, who, again, remember, go back to earlier in the video when I said that he was responsible for a rebellion that was unprecedented in the history of the United States. Now, Cuomo wasn't that bad by comparison, but he was still thrown out, and Democrats called him to accountability, and it really showed, in my opinion, the difference between the two parties. One had accountability and one did not. The guy who showed up as the shaman, his party, refused to say that Trump did anything wrong. They claimed that Trump was right. They claimed the whole time that Trump was still the president of the United States, even though he lost in a unanimous decision. So all of politics in 2021 turned out to be a complete clown show, a complete laughingstock, a complete abuse of power, in my opinion, on both sides, but more egregiously with the Republicans, because as we discussed in other videos, they refuse to take accountability for their actions of their candidate, their president, and their guy who did something far worse than what Governor Cuomo was accused of. Now, I'm not saying that Governor Cuomo is an innocent person. I'm not saying he's a saint. He deserved to be thrown out for what he had done to those women. But I said it then, and I'll say it now. 2020 is just taking sides, sports teams, political gang banging. You're only siding with that guy because you feel like he's on your side. You feel like you're going to gain points by claiming that he is the worst person that ever lived. Meanwhile, your guy is just as bad, if not worse. Okay, we move into other months where the virus is still raising. It's like all this is going on and we're all attacking each other. Back and forth, we're attacking each other. But people like me and people like Lisa, bystanders, right, that are not really taking sides, not really engaged necessarily in this political back and forth, this political gang banging, this political sportsmanship, sports team BS. We're saying, well, y'all are doing all this, but what about the virus? What about the global pandemic that still exists that you are allowing to get more variants out there, different variants? It seems like COVID has more sequels than freaking Star Wars. Let's get real now. You got COVID 1, you got the Delta, and then you got Omicron. And nobody's paying attention to this. Everybody's trying to one-up each other. Everybody is still on a campaign trail, even though the freaking election has been over with for months. They're still out there trying to undermine Joe Biden, even to the point where they came up with a secret chant of "Let's go, Brandon." That was a sly way of trying to say F the president. Like Lisa said, it is still going on. It is still happening. This political gangbang, this political taking sides, just craziness. I mean, get the virus under control, do something, let's unite together. Also, things that are happening on the home front. Kyle Rittenhouse, the individual Kyle Rittenhouse that went into a protest and shot up a bunch of people looking for trouble that night, calling himself protecting the property of his friend, was found not guilty. He gets on the stage and he starts crying like a little baby, even though he knew fully well what he was doing. He knew fully well that he was going to go down there to start trouble at that protest in Wisconsin. He knew fully well that that was going to happen. But he took the law into his own hands and he couldn't. Okay, yes, he did this in 2020, Lisa. We know that. But the ramifications of what he did came to light in 2021. What 2021 basically was the result of the things that had happened in 2020. He went down there knowing in 2020 what he was going to do. And he was going to start trouble. He was going to defend the property of his friend. And this year, he was let off. People say, well, he was just a kid. Well, many of people in communities of color have been just a kid, quote unquote, and they have been convicted of far worse. Might I remind you of the Central Park Five? But anyway, he gets let off. Other cases that happened in 2021, people do get justice, such as Derek Chauvin, who killed George Floyd, and we all saw it. He got convicted. Kim Porter got convicted, and like Lisa is saying, Ahmaud Arbery, the shooter of Ahmaud Arbery, also got convicted and went to jail. So there was some justice served. But in plenty of cases from the fallout of 2020, there was not justice served in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse. So with the criminal justice system, there is still much to be desired and much to be let off. In terms of international stuff, like I said, the fallout of 2020, this is the end result. This is 2021, the sequel. This is what we get. This is the to be continued. Like if this was a TV show, people would say, well, to be continued. Well, same thing. The fallout internationally. Haiti's president in the middle of the night gets shot. Janelle Moise gets shot in the middle of the night. Sniper sent by the United States government to try to kill him and shoot him. Not try to kill him, actually shoot him. And the president of Haiti is assassinated in July and leaves the whole Caribbean in turmoil. Haiti is still suffering to this day the ramifications of that action, but we all know how that story is going to end when you have the United States always influencing other countries, specifically those in the Caribbean. So, on top of this virus, we have international coups and international takeovers. What we see in the Middle East is a change of leadership in the Middle East. Netanyahu is thrown out. Naftali Bennett is crowned the new prime minister of Israel, and a sea change also happens in Iran with Ibrahim Raisi as the new Ayatollah. We also see other historical events, like the first Ayatollah in Iraq's history to be uh, to meet with Pope Francis, first time ever that a Shia Ayatollah in Iraq has ever met with a Christian or Catholic Pope, and the first time ever that Cuba's population since the communist takeover of 1959 have ever protested in the streets. All of this stuff happening in the middle of July. So while we're still dealing with a global pandemic, we're dealing with a sea change, a change of leaders, a change of scenery. Some justice is being served around the world, some is not. What is also happening? Riots in South Africa. As the leader, Thabo Mbeki, who was a beloved leader of South Africa, is put in jail, the people erupt in a rebellion. Just like in Cuba. The Cuba situation happened because they were not able to get the vaccine and they revolted. The South African situation was a beloved leader and he was locked in jail and they revolted against that. So people were making their voices heard in 2021. They were tired of being told what to do, tired of being told what to think, and they were finally lashing out against the political establishment. So, in my opinion, in terms of the political arena, it was a time that people were finally making their voices heard, and they were finally speaking up and speaking loudly in many countries around the world. In other societies in the Middle East, um, things are still kind of the way they were. In societies in Latin America, things are kind of still the way they were. But in the case of Ethiopia, Ethiopia was a case this whole summer that was dealing with genocide. For the first time ever, the the Tigray ethnic group was thrown out of power by the Amoro ethnic group that they had controlled the country for years and kind of had their boots on the necks of this particular ethnic group. And now the Amoros have taken over and they're out there committing genocide against the Tigrays, and all of Ethiopia erupted into war. Sudan is another country. Sudan overthrew their elected leader, their longtime leader, Omar al Bashir, and then they overthrew the second leader, and erupted into civil war. And that's what's happening now as we head into 2021. Hopefully, Haiti can get some peace. Hopefully, Sudan can get some peace. And hopefully, Ethiopia can resolve this ethnic conflict. Um, as we head into the summer again, uh, yeah, I was getting there, Lisa. As we head into the summer again, the United States finally pulls out of their longest war, 18 years. 20 years to be in Afghanistan. We finally pull out. Unfortunately, the Taliban retakes power within hours. I said it then and I'll say it now. There was no way for the United States to ever hold on to such a tribal and divisive society as Afghanistan, especially in the time of uncertainty. Because what happens in a time of uncertainty, folks, is that we latch on to that which we know and that which is familiar and that which is calm. And that's what they did. That's the choice they made. They chose to side with the Taliban, and that was it. But it was an amazing scene to see as the planes were pulling out. People were piling on to these planes, trying to get out and trying to get out of the country. The people that were not down with the Taliban, and they were trying to get out as fast as they could. Like Lisa said, and I was just going to get around to it, Lisa, thank you. Barbados became an independent republic for the first time ever this year. Now, people say, oh, Barbados been existed. Yes, but go back to the video in the archives that talks about Barbados. And for the longest in its history, Barbados was a part of the British Commonwealth, was under the British control. Finally, in 2021, they finally won an independence. They finally asserted their identity and rights. They finally made their voices heard. Again, this is what 2021 was about, making your voices heard. But in many ways, I feel like Barbados, Afghanistan, and all these other international things that we're talking about is really the fallout of 2020. What happened in 2020 was so unprecedented. We don't have to rehash it, but it created a situation that has never existed in our world. It created a situation where people finally want self-determination. People finally want to do their own thing. And for Barbados, that meant going their own way. Here on the home front, in terms of rappers and in terms of the rap world, we lost a lot of rappers this year. Slim 400, Young Dolph, and others, to violence, to a lot of violence. The violence in the cities around the world, around the country, continue. And that's something we want to pray for. That is a negative thing. The prevalence of drill music and the prevalence of the praising of negativity is something we want to pray for. But a rapper that we lost, thank you, Lisa, I was going to segue into it. A rapper that we lost in 2021 that was a main focus of many of us that grew up in the 90s that we did not lose to violence was DMX. DMX unfortunately passed away this year in 2021. And it's a sad story. I'm not going to go into why that is. Go back and watch the video in the archives. Another sad story that we can all remember is Black Rob, somebody else who had a lot of problems and who I said at the time was forgotten and forsaked by the rap community, especially P. Diddy. But I don't want to focus too much, rest in peace to DMX. I don't want to focus too much on the negativity as far as the rap world is concerned, because one of our brothers, one of the luminaries of the hip hop world, did something that is righteous and is running for office in his country, and we spoke about it, and that is Shine. Shine now has turned his life around and is focused a lot on politics in his local country of Belize and is doing positive things. So there is some negativity like anything else, but there was a lot of positivity, and he was one of the positive stories that stuck out. Rihanna also is one of the positive stories that she became a face. She became the focal point of her country, Barbados's independence movement, and became a shining celebrity, a shining beacon for her community in the rap and R&B music world. So it's not all negative. Don't let anybody sit there and tell you that hip hop artists and our young hip hop artists, our young hip hop and R&B and pop artists are not doing negative. Are not doing positive things, because they are. And as Lisa is saying, our sisters out there, like Meg The Stallion, who got her college degree this year in 2021, did it big. Yeah, people didn't like the video, the political satire that she made with Joe Biden that was called Thought Shit, but okay, whatever. They're never going to like what you do, so you might as well do it all and do it big. So to balance out the negativity, we have the positivity. Also, as we remind around to the Olympics. The Olympics this year was held in Tokyo, Japan, despite the stupidity of the Japanese government that should have never allowed it to happen. It happened, and um, there was some controversy with Simone Biles dropping out initially, and people shamed Simone for not participating. She had gone through some problems, and it was a huge debate about what is more important, winning an award, winning a gold medal in Japan, or doing what is right for your mental health. And ultimately she decided what she did was right for her mental health. And we debated hotly about the things that are important in society, that our American society places too much responsibility and too much importance on the gold, and too much responsibility on sports over mental health. And also, Tamara Mensah-Stock becoming the first women's wrestler to win in her category, and then saying that she was proud of being an American, proud to accomplish her goal of winning in women's wrestling and shining for the women's wrestling team. There was also some controversy, as you could see, with Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, and controversy with Sha'Carri Richardson, where we debated in our society, is marijuana really a performance enhancing drug? And this was the time. This was Black Girl Magic in the sports arena. It seemed like it was a Black girl year in terms of sports. And there was so many haters. Again, it was all politicized. Everything was politicized. Sha'Carri Richardson does something, she's made out to be like she's a thug. She's made out to be like she's ratchet. Tamara Mensah-Stock says that she's proud of her country. Oh, well, they say, well, oh, she's the one that we should be representing. She's the one that should be proud of her country. Yeah, she should be proud of her country. But why is she held to the paradigm to be used as a battering ram or as a battering stick against her fellow sisters like Simone Biles and Sha'Carri and Naomi Osaka? So, if you had a theme to sum up besides divisiveness and besides something positive, something to put a positive spin on it, I would say that 2021 was the year that was Black Girl Magic, that they went to Japan and they conquered Japan in terms of the world of sports. And they showed us that sports isn't ever, like sometimes you could win without winning. You could win by stepping down, or you could win by doing what's right, by not competing. Like, again, Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles. By doing that, Simone became a hero to millions of young girls by, in an ironic way, not competing and taking on the haters, taking on those detractors that said, "Oh, well, she's not doing what's right by her country. She's not doing what she's supposed to. She's not out there representing." But she was out there representing for a larger battle than just sports. So, like Lisa said in 2021, in the world of sports, Black Girl Magic. But again, they politicized it. It was funny because you go back and watch my 2010s Decade in Review video. I said that the Republicans are out here saying that they don't want things politicized in terms of their sports and entertainment. But they were the ones that politicized everything. They politicized even the vaccine. They politicized Simone Biles stepping down. They politicized Sha'Carri Richardson, trying to make her out to be a thuggin' like she was ratchet. But then when Tamara Mensah Stock said she was proud of her country, they politicized that as well and tried to use it as a battering ram against other black athletes. Uh, that segues into another shining moment, and that was in the world of professional wrestling for African American entertainers and African American wrestlers. It was the first time ever that Bobby Lashley, a black wrestler, walked into WrestleMania as the champion and walked out of WrestleMania as the champion. And the first time ever the two black performers, Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, main evented in the women's division at WrestleMania. And that was a huge story. So that goes hand in hand with it being Black Girl Magic in the world of sports and entertainment. Now, in the world of music this year, besides all the deaths and everything, all the negativity, was predominantly predominated by The Weeknd. The Weeknd had the longest run in terms of a song, Save Your Tears. It was everywhere. It became to a point where you would always hear that song and you would become so annoyed with that song when you turned it on the radio, especially in the spring, especially when it was the main song that you were hearing all the time. You were like, "Oh, I'm tired of this song. I'm tired of this song." In other in other instances in music, we had a lot of trolls in the music industry. One being Little Nas X. Little Nas X, our favorite friends, that had the biggest song in Billboard charts history in 2019, has now turned into an evil troll in 2021. How did he turn into a troll? Well, he made a very provocative sexual song that many people were like, "Yo, that is too explicit. That is too homoerotic. I'm not down with that. I don't agree with that. I don't co-sign it." But it brought into vogue a larger debate, and that was if you co-signed it for the song Normani and Cardi B, which sampled an Aaliyah song, or you co-signed it for WAP, or you co-signed it for That Shit, would you also co-sign it for a gay song? And we got into a whole debate and we got into a whole discussion in 2021 about what is appropriate in terms of sexuality in a music video. Did Little Nas X take it too far with his industry baby song? Apparently, he did not, because just by talking about it and just by bringing it up, you were giving him attention. But I say he took the crown in 2021 from 6ix9ine, who was initially the biggest troll in all of music. Now it is Little Nas X that has taken the crown as being the biggest troll with his tweets and messages in all of music. Um, in terms of movies, we're jumping around a little bit, but we're talking now about movies. In terms of movies, it was a weird era because again, we continued with the streaming, we continued with Yeah. Okay. Lisa wants to bring this up, and I completely forgot about this. Thank you, Lisa. Again, Jay Z has now taken the crown from Little Nas X in the end of 2021, and he is now the biggest troll in all of music, saying that his wife is the natural evolution of Michael Jackson, and that nobody could stand on stage with him in verses. And in verses took on a different term. We're not going to talk about movies. We're going to continue to here in the music world because there's stuff I'm forgetting that my co-host Lisa is bringing up. Verses, verses took on a whole nother level. Before last year, it was just something to pass the time by as we were locked in and we couldn't get out, and it was something to pass the time on. Um, you know, as far as recreation. Versus this year, it took on a whole nother level. They had a battle between Dipset and the Locks that they had the whole arena of Madison Square Garden filled, and you could just feel the energy of Dipset, the energy of the Locks, the energy of Dipset, and everybody was watching it and everybody was paying attention to it. And by the end of it, it, it was just a real New York energy. But that, like everything else, people had to ruin it with their nonsense, their BS. And by the end of it, we had 3-6 Mafia. We had 3-6 Mafia going against 3-6 Mafia going against Bone Thugs and Harmony. And Bone Thugs and Harmony and Dips I mean Bone Thugs and Harmony and on 3-6 Mafia almost get into this war between each other. And it's almost like they're battling it out. They're not just battling it out on wax, but now they're calling each other out of their name. And versus just becomes something wild, something crazy, something like the Royal Rumble, something like out of WWE. So we move on to the movies. In the movies, it continues with the streaming, it continues with Amazon Prime, it continues with Netflix, it continues in the streaming services as I predicted in other videos that it would. And that leads us into In the Heights. In the Heights came out in 2008 and it was highly anticipated. It was Lin Manuel Miranda's first play before he had Hamilton, before he had all his other hits. And it flops. And there's a huge backlash against it because people say that it is colorist, that it did not display the array of um, different complexions, and it did not accurately represent Afro Latinos in the play or in the environments of New York City in the Heights. So it doesn't do as well as expected. But I liked it. I anticipated it. Uh, it coming out. Lisa and I saw it in 2008. It was the first and only play that I seen um, live. But I gotta say, the movie was not as good as I expected. It did not hit with the audiences as I expected that it would. Neither did another movie, West Side Story. West Side Story came out with the remake in 2021, and it was not. It also left a lot to be desired. People that liked the original really did not like this one, and I myself did not enjoy this one at all. I felt that the story fell flat, and I also felt that people were not educated on the importance or the gravitas of the original movie, so they couldn't really necessarily grasp. They couldn't really grasp why this movie was good. You know, why should we care about West Side Story? You know what I mean? In its original, I mean, in its original context. You know, they were like, "Is West Side?" A lot. Some people were like, "Hey, is West Side Story and In the Heights the same thing?" Some of the people did not know about this musical. So Steven Spielberg puts out this huge effort in West Side Story, and it flops and it goes nowhere. Um, what else? In terms of movies, in terms of that's another thing, Lisa, I didn't forgot to mention. They didn't put West Side Story on streaming, even though Disney bought the rights to it. It's still not on streaming now. But still, if it had been in the theaters, I still think it wouldn't have done as well because they didn't really educate the people on why they should care necessarily about this film. You know what I mean? Like this, the 1961 version was um, one of the best movies ever made. Rita Moreno was in it. She was in this one, but she wasn't. She didn't do a good job promoting it. She didn't do a good job telling people of why they should care about one of the best movies ever made. Instead of that, Spider-Man Go Home is now the number one movie. But the movie industry left a lot to be desired in the pandemic era because we didn't have anything new. We didn't have anything original, all just remakes. Even though Pixar came out and they did their thing with Luca, I recommend watching the film Luca because it it is on it is on par with the best that Pixar has ever done. So if you're gonna go watch something new, go watch that. In terms of television, again, television continues pushing forward. Television continues to do their thing. But before we, with 50 Cent's BMF remake about the life of Gangsta Big Meech, um, and the book of Boba, the new Star Wars show that just premiered yesterday, that is from Disney Plus. And like Lisa said, Encanto makes history, and Encanto may do something that In the Heights and West Side Story did not do, and that is capture the Latino audience and get the Latino audience all on board for a new movie. Another remake and another adaptation that flopped that they thought would hit big was The Many Saints of Newark that came out on HBO Max about the early life of Tony Soprano. That they thought was going to hit big, and it didn't. It flopped. It went nowhere. People didn't watch it. The Italian American community was offended by their depiction of it, because again, they didn't strike when the iron is hot. They wanted to make an adaptation of The Sopranos, a show from the 2000s, and by the time they came out with an adaptation, nobody cared anymore. But the biggest thing on TV right now is the BMF show, and the Book of Boba. Somehow, I think, in a weird way, Disney and Pixar, I mean, Disney and Lucasfilm are kind of watching 50 Cent's production company because he had the Book of Power. He has a bunch of Power spinoffs, and they have a bunch of Mandalorian spinoffs. So, I mean, what is really going on? It seems like there is some sort of parallel between, ironically, 50 Cent and producers at Lucasfilm. So, and also rest in peace to Michael K. Williams. We lost Michael K. Williams this year, a big luminary in the Hollywood world. We also lost, before we leave the movie section, Stephen Sondheim right before West Side Story. So that's what makes the West Side Story um, story, if you will, even more tragic because we lost such a luminary figure in the musical world, and losing him and the movie not doing so well made us all sad. And also losing Michael K. Williams at the time made us all sad. And 50 Cent trolling, saying what he said at the time when Michael K. Williams died, disrespecting Michael K. Williams at the time he died. It was just low, but 50 Cent is 50 Cent. What are you going to do? He's a troll. Another guy that takes the troll candle. Yeah, Lisa's correct. We also lost Cicely Tyson. There's a video on her in the archives. She had a tremendous book out. So, rest in peace to her. She was, of course, a luminary in the Hollywood world, a really solid professional that is a veteran of the Hollywood world. Um, what else? Okay, moving on to the world of professional wrestling completely. As we mentioned, WrestleMania 37 was the first wrestling event to have people back in the audience, back traveling. WWE went on tour again. AEW went on tour again. And we started off the year in the Royal Rumble with Edge and Bianca Belair winning their respective Royal Rumble slots. And then we moved on to WrestleMania. But then after WrestleMania, Roman Reigns, what can I say about Roman Reigns except that Roman Reigns was the dominant professional wrestler this year. He had turned heel last summer, when he came back after SummerSlam, and then he dominated, and he formed the bloodline with the Usos, and him and Paul Heyman, with Paul Heyman as his consultant, as the tribal chief, just dominated. He mohove over Edge and Daniel Bryan, winning against them in a triple threat match. And he was the star of the WWE. He was the one saving grace as the WWE Universal Champion that we all looked forward to. But it was AEW this year, AEW in 2021, that hit, AEW that managed to get CM Punk back in the building. CM Punk back in professional wrestling after 7 years of being gone from the world of professional wrestling. CM Punk finally returned as a hometown boy in Chicago, Illinois, and the place just went wild. I have not seen that kind of energy from a professional in a professional wrestling setting since the Attitude Era. It was just incredible. And then CM Punk was just full steam ahead. Now he's feuding with, he's feuding with Darby Allin. He's feuding with Sting. He's doing his thing. But WWE, not to be outdone, also had somebody come back at SummerSlam this year, and that was Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar with a whole new look, a ponytail, a beard, and everything. He's feuding with Sami Zayn. He's doing some of the best work he's ever done. And he recently turned Paul Heyman into a babyface. The segment with Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns, in which Paul Heyman is fired by Roman Reigns, and then Brock Lesnar comes to his aid, and he says, Paul Heyman says, I am not protecting Brock Lesnar from you. I am protecting you from Brock Lesnar. And then Brock Lesnar comes back out, and he electrifies the crowd. So even though professional wrestling is not doing as well as it used to be, some things we had to the were big events in 2021 in both AEW and the WWE. But I say, as far as the WWE, it was Roman Reigns that dominated. And as far as AEW, it was CM Punk. Daniel Bryan, who was in the main event at WrestleMania 37, did jump ship, and he is now in AEW as Bryan Danielson again. But his jump was not as big as CM Punk's because we hadn't seen CM Punk for 7 years on wrestling television. But that is what I'll be remembering in the world of professional wrestling in terms of 2021 was CM Punk's homecoming, when CM Punk came in there and he dropped to his knees. Also, another guy that has been a shining star, and he's from my area in the Northeast, that is a shining star, is MJF. MJF came in the AEW show in Long Island, New York, and the ovation he got from the ovation he got. Yeah, Lisa, for sure. Okay. Yeah, the ovation MJF got in the Long Island, New York crowd when he came. um, yeah, there was a guy that jumped over the barricade and attacked Seth Rollins, and he used to even beat up Seth Rollins. We have a video covering it in the archives. He beats up. He's supposed to be the beast slayer that is Seth Rollins, get beats up by this fan. But MJF comes to New York with AEW. AEW breaking the barrier, coming to New York, not being like WCW, coming to Long Island. MJF gets this huge ovation and is showing you that in 2021, AEW is still doing what AEW does. AEW is still heading out with steam. So much like Versus and much like other types of promotional companies, other types of entertainment companies, AEW is doing that thing. Also, what has a lot of people talking in terms of the fight world, and we have a video on it, is Jake Paul. Jake Paul defeats Tyrone Woodley and knocks Tyrone Woodley the hell out. I mean, Tyrone Woodley, Tyrone Woodley's legs just, just fall. And it's like now Jake Paul is this dude. He's like a Mayweather now. They're like, who's gonna knock Jake Paul out? Who's gonna knock him out? Who's gonna knock him out? Who's gonna be the guy that's finally gonna take Jake Paul off of his throne? Just as I predicted, just as they're doing with Versus, just as they're doing in the music world, in the fight world, in the sports entertainment world, it is Triller that is taking over the game. AEW is doing the thing. WWE just continues to truck along, but it is Triller with these kind of fights, these kind of Jake Paul-esque fights that are really having people talk. It is not even the UFC. I predicted in the 2020, the 2010s video, Lisa, that it would be Triller. There would be the UFC that would take the crown for the sports entertainment world, the fighting world, what have you, MMA, boxing, and pro wrestling. But it is Jake Paul that has become the troll. So you may just have to split it with Jay-Z and Little Nas X as being the number one troll, because this is another guy that people want to knock out. Jumping around a little bit to another person that people want to knock out is Candace Owens, who steals her political slogan from Barack Obama, a man that she purports to disagree with, and then she says, "Yes, we can." Where you come off saying "Yes, we can" in 2021? Somebody needs to close Candace Owens up as they close. So let's rid the world of these trolls, like the Jake Pauls of the world, the Candace Owenses of the world, and the Little Nas X's of the world. Just as another thing in 2021, The View has gotten rid of Meghan McCain. Finally, in 2021, Meghan McCain is no longer on The View. She's done for. She's over. Her time is up. So, yes, we can this. But like Lisa is saying, Anne Rice has passed away. Many others have passed away. There's a long list of people, some of which we mentioned, some of which we did not. The video is going on for an hour now. But that is 2021 in a nutshell. As I could sum it up, we are still in a very contentious world, a very divisive world. People are not wanting, people are jumping over the barricade to attack wrestlers. People are stealing other people's political slogans. People are politicizing the vaccine and politicizing every little thing we go through in 2021. Oh, yes, yes. I cannot forget about that. Candace Owens does an interview with Trump, and then Candace thinks that Trump is going to agree with her stance on the vaccine. Again, they politicize the vaccine. They make it a political thing. So Candace thinks that she's going to get some brownie points with Trump. Trump then turns around and says he supports he supports getting the vaccine. So Candace Owens, somebody who's an actor, somebody who is like Jake Paul, who is like these kind of trolls, these kind of Little Nas X type trolls, she stands there looking, her face like her face is just shocked. She got egg all over her face. She doesn't know what to say. And then she's just looking like she's shocked. Like, what the hell, man? You know what I mean? She thinks that Trump is gonna agree with us. She thinks she's gonna get the cosign from Trump. Her interview on the Daily Wire. First of all, why are they charging to be on the Daily Wire? Like, you're on Ben Shapiro's freaking website, Ben Shapiro's show, and she thinks that she's some kind of star. She thinks that she's some kind of celebrity. So it was black girl magic for a lot of young black girls, Sasha Banks, Bianca Belair, others, but it was not black girl magic for Candace Owens because she got rejected by Trump. It was like, to give you guys some kind of comparison. It was sort of like she was thinking that Trump was like the popular guy at school that he was going to ask her out. And then he goes and he spins back around and he asks another girl out on a date instead of her. And she's left looking stupid, holding, the love note. you know, like, uh, so she had egg on her face. She, much like the producers of West Side Story, did not survey the situation correctly, and she did not come out on top of that. So 2021 was not her year. She is a big time loser in 2021, and she is a big time loser in general. She also came out in support of a school shooter. Yep, that a debate that Lisa herself engaged in about a school shooting. I think it was in Michigan, in which Candace Owens defended a school shooter and actually said that there is more violence in inner city schools than this school shooter, and that black people, yes, black people, her own race, are a more bigger deterrent to society than these school shootings, which are majority white. So, Candace Owens, you're the biggest loser of 2021, and that's the end of you. Also, even Kamala Harris got into a shouting match with Charlemagne the God over politics. So, even her came out not smelling like roses, and Charlemagne the God asked some challenging questions in that interview. So I think politicians now, they're going to lowball it, and they're just going to go on shows where they don't ask them any kind of heavy hitting political questions because because they want to go pre-prepared. Okay, in terms of damn, what am I missing? In terms of 2021, what else has happened? So much has happened. Of course, Whack 100 dissing an entire race. That's a thing. Go back in the archives and look at that. Um, Nas coming out with an album that was completely slept on. Nas's new album is complete fire. Go check it out if you haven't checked it out. And that is basically it for 2021. It's been a crazy year. People going at each other. People combating each other. Again, rest in peace to all those we lost in 2021. Um, and everyone should stay safe. Everyone should get vaccinated, despite what Candace Owens and other Republicans are telling you. Get vaccinated, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and stay well. The shootings. Yeah, again, it's been a lot of shootings, at least in a lot of violence, but I'm trying to keep this video as lightweight as possible, not really try to go off into a tangent talking about a lot of school shootings. Unfortunately, it's just more of what we've been seeing in the past decade, especially in the 2010s. Um, oh, to end this on a kind of light note, or a kind of crazy note, if you will, monkeys, lemur monkeys started committing acts of violence against dogs. Dogs, yes, you heard that right, in apparent revenge killing for the killing of this one baby monkey. These these monkeys went on a rampage. The hair lady, I didn't hear about. They went on a rampage throwing dogs off cliffs. So it's been violence all around, not just in the human realm, but even in the dog realm. The animal kingdom, the hair lady. At least I didn't hear about the hair lady. Uh, Hair lady. Okay. Oh yeah, hair lady. Okay, yeah. Kind of forgot. Gorilla glue lady has to get. uh, yeah, the monkeys thing is in India. Segue into that gorilla glue lady that appeared in the news in 2022. 2020 has now had to get had to get her hair surgically reimplanted. So she has less. She's worrying about more what's on her hand than what's in her hair. That is the story with her. Um, Travis Scott. Okay, yeah, we can't leave um the video without talking to you about the unfortunate tragedy at Astro World that happened with Travis Scott, in which plenty of people died and people trampled over each other. That was a story that was in the news, and that was tragic. Travis Scott, unfortunately, I feel like his career has been tarnished by that. He'll be forever remembered as the guy that had the incident at Astro World. So we pray for the souls of those individuals that we lost during that unfortunate incident. And that is basically it, guys. I didn't cover everything. I tried to remember as much as possible. There are other videos, but to sum it all up, um, it's been a crazy year It's been a very combative year. It's been a very violent year. Whether we're talking about the monkeys who stormed the Capitol in January the 6th, or the monkeys, the literal monkeys that are throwing puppies off the roof. It's been a year of violence. It's been a year of a tragic fallout from a crazy, unprecedented year. But it's also been a year of excitement, a year of unexpectedness, and a year when we went back outside. To sum it up, little AG's saying memes continue to dominate the world of the internet. To sum it up, as little AG Z would say, we outside. Peace, guys. Have a, a lovely and happy new year and a blessed one with your family. And it's 2022. Hopefully, 2022 is not is not the sequel to 2020 to 2020, because as we all know, Hollywood, all they do is shitty sequels. So let's hope this is not the sequel to 2020. Peace.